Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be discussing about how should the November USMNT roster look like. This will be the last camp of the year of 2025, so this will be the last camp before the most important year in US soccer history. So this camp is going to be very important. There's going to be a lot of injuries, but still this camp is very important. You're going to play two good games against Paraguay and Uruguay, so two teams that qualified to the World Cup. So getting a result in both of these games is important for this team. So today we're going to be discussing about how should this roster look like. So let's get on with the video. But before we continue, I'd like to tell you guys to like and subscribe so you guys can never miss another video, and to also not to forget to follow me on X and on TikTok. There will be more content on those pages. So let's start off in goal with the keepers. Obviously, you have to pick the top two options in experience and quality, Matt Freese and Matt Turner. I think for right now, Matt Freese is starter. During the Gold Cup and during the friendlies after the Gold Cup, he has been a very solid option. He hasn't been perfect. He's had some mistakes, but for right now, he has been a very solid choice in goal for the USMNT. And Matt Turner as a second option, well, he has that experience, so obviously those are our top two options. Then that third option, I think it has to be Chris Brady. I know a lot of people might mention Zach Steffen or Patrick Schulte, but I think both are very inconsistent in MLS. While Chris Brady has been a little bit more consistent, has had great saves and great games, he's also younger, he's on the come up. So I think Chris Brady for right now has to be that third option. I know a lot of people might mention Dale Cochin, but up until he gets more minutes, until at least Barcelona gives him minutes in Copa del Rey games, or let's say they send him out on loan, which is very unlikely, I think Chris Brady for right now has to be that third option. Dale Cochin might be the future in goal for the USMNT, but for right now, you have to pick your best three options available. Next, we're going with the center backs, and considering that you play with a back three, you have to see all the options you have. I think two out of the three center backs, I think they're locked in starters for Poch, and in the eyes of many fans also. But you have to see the other options that you also have. And I'll have to mention that Cameron Carter Vickers is not going to be an option, most likely even for this upcoming World Cup. He just got an Achilles injury, and it's very unfortunate because this group needs all the center backs it could get, and just having another center back injured is just painful to watch. So you have to at least look at other options that you have on the table, but not having Cameron Carter Vickers as an option is going to hurt this national team in one way or another. But going right now, well, you have to obviously pick your best center back that you have right now. Chris Richards, very good season with Crystal Palace. I think for right now, he has to start as that middle center back. If there was a center back that I trust defending in an isolation and even covering for other people's mistakes, I think it has to be Chris Richards. Richards is the best center back that we have by far today. And although he plays as a right center back for Crystal Palace, but I think for the USMT, he has to play as that middle center back just because he's the best one by far. Tim Ream, another locked-in starter in the eyes of many fans and also in the eyes of Poch. I think the guy, although the guy's not perfect, but I think the guy does the job very well as that last center back. He is somewhat mobile for his age, and I like a lot of what I see from him, especially while building out of the back. And then as that right center back, I think it'll be between Mark McKenzie and Joe Scally. Please, Poch, bring Joe Scally. He's probably one of the better defenders that we have right now. And just leave behind whatever he did in March. I think you have to pick Joe Scally just because he's one of our better defenders today. And Joe Scally, I would trust him as that third right center back. I think he will do that job very well because when we played with a back four, he would often slide in as that third center back when the USMT built out of the back. So I would trust him in that position. And the two other ones I would avoid bringing guys like Miles Robinson because you've already seen him a lot of times, and a lot of times the guy has disappointed. So I would bring Noah Kai Banks and Leonard Maloney. Banks is the future at the center back position for the SMT, and I think for right now the guy can contribute just because that position is so thin right now. And then Leonard Maloney, just another option you have as that middle center back, someone who can cover ground, probably cannot build out of the back, but defending wise, I trust him. Next, we're going with the fullbacks or wingbacks or whatever you want to call them. So I have to start off with mentioning two key injuries for this position. A Rob, we're probably not going to see him throughout this entire calendar year. Very unfortunate. Probably one of the best players we have on this national team. We're not going to see him at all during this calendar year, which is very, very unfortunate. And then Temuel, he's also going to be out. And when we played with a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, he mostly played as a winger, but with this back three system, he's played more as a fullback. And the guy has looked pretty okay in this new system. And I think it's very unfortunate that we'll also miss out on seeing him for this camp. But still, there's still plenty of talent left on this group. I think you have to start off with Sergio Dest. Sergio Dest, with this new system, we're in to see a very good version of Sergio Dest. I'm not trying to say that the guy has played bad at all for the USMT. I think he's played great, but I think we'll be seeing an even better version of Sergio Dest just because he gets to focus less on his defensive responsibility and just focus more on attacking. And I think that the guy is probably the best offensive fullback that we have right now in this current USMT fullback pool. So I'm excited to see him on what he can do because in the little bit of minutes that I saw of him against Japan, I saw a lot of good stuff from him, especially in transition. So I'm excited to see what he can offer in this new system. And then Christopher Lund, although he's been very mid so far with the USMT, but right now he's a Bundesliga starter, and I don't think you can reject and bring in a Bundesliga starter, especially with all these injuries. I think we'll see Max Arson in some way or another, but I'm just hoping that he just brings Christopher Lund. Posh has to bring him in. And then another option, Yunus Musa, can also play as a midfielder, but I think in this system, I'll trust him as a fullback. He has played as a wingback before for Milan, so I don't think he should be very I think he should be somewhat familiar of playing this position. And then Alex Freeman, a dynamic player. He's been disappointing so far, especially offensively for the USMNT, but for Orlando, he's been very good. And considering the situation we are in right now with all these injuries, well, you have to bring him in. Next, we're going with the midfielders. And of course, you have to select Tyler Adams. Has had a very good season so far with Bournemouth, and Bournemouth are right now fighting a Champions League position. And I think he's a big reason of why, because the guy has been very good for them so far. And I think with all the defensive pieces that they've lost, a lot of players have risen up to the occasion for Bournemouth. And I think one of those players is Tyler Adams. Just scored a goal against Man City during the weekend. He had a knock, but I don't think it will be that serious. So I think we'll get to see him for this camp. And then Taryn Tessman is another guy that should be here. Very good season for Lyon so far. Is a locked in starter for them. So I think he should also be a starter alongside Tyler and this midfield duo. And then Johnny Cardoso, you should bring him just because in quality and talent, he's probably up there with the USMT. I know the guy's probably struggled with the national team so far, but with a guy with his talent and his quality, you have to bring him regardless because we all know like about Malik. Malik Tillman used to struggle a lot with the USMT, but after the Gold Cup, he's kind of gotten things figured out. So I think with a player with Johnny Cardoso, he's eventually gonna get the ground running with the national team. So you just have to keep bringing him just for that, just where he can get that confidence, and that confidence can play a key role in him just having a good career with the national team. And then I'll also bring James Sands and Adam Morris and Vals Poch. They weren't very good last camp, but it was their first camp back, so I would let it slide. I wouldn't mind bringing seeing back Christian Odon. I know he's a very divisive figure, but I think if the guy's just a late bloomer and he had that great game against Australia, well, I wouldn't mind seeing him again. Next, we're going with the wingers and tens. And now, when I say this position got hit hard by injuries, I mean they got hit hard. Pulisic, our best player, is out, and well, that's a big hit for this position. And then Malik Tillman, one of our most talented players, is also out, so another big hit to this group. And then Sendejas is out, a solid option at this position. So that is three options out for this camp. So our depth is going to get examined during this camp. So who will I pick if I were Poch? Obviously, you have to pick Weston McKennie, the best player available at this position. I know the 10 might not be his best position or his natural position, but he plays this position for the USMNT. Poch trusts him in that position, and well, I guess he'll start playing here from now on. And so, other than him, we'll also like to Brendan Aronson. Brendan Aronson, I know he's inconsistent in the Premier League, but he had a great game against West Ham the other day, so you just have to count on him. He also played pretty good against Australia when he came on. He played good as a wingback and also as a 10, so I can trust him in a game against Paraguay, for example. And Diego Luna, I'll also trust him. I know he hasn't played good against once you rise up the level in competition, but I think he'll eventually get there. I think he's a player with a good future in the national team. And then Gio Reyna has to be an option during this camp, especially with all these players out. You can say what you want about his club form, but he is a player that always comes up, that always rises up to the occasion when he plays for the USMT. So you have to pick him, especially with all these injuries. And I think Owen Wolf over here has to be the wild card, has to be that extra player. He had himself a pretty good season in MLS, especially when Austin shifted him out wide. I think that's when his season came alive. He scored a couple of goals, also had a couple of assists, and had himself a pretty good season, especially as a winger. Other options for this camp can be Rokas Pukstas, who's having a pretty good season for himself in the Croatian League, and Brian Gutierrez, who had himself a pretty decent season with the Chicago Fire. But I think that wild card has to be Owen Wolf. He's a player with a good future in MLS and might even go to Europe this January, depending on if Austin wants to sell him or not. So yeah, we're going to finish this video off with the strikers, and it's very good to see that our top three options at this position are going to be available for this camp. I think Josh Sargent has fallen off that top three in the player pool for the US because I think his form has been very poor for the US, and it also has not helped that his form with Norwich has also fallen off. So it's very unfortunate to see, but unless he gets a move to the Prem and starts scoring goals over there, unless that happens, I don't think he has a shot of making it to the World Cup roster. I think there's even a better possibility that he ends up coming to MLS because I've always heard those rumors. So it's very unfortunate to see and very unfortunate to hear. But Josh Sargent, from what it appears, he's not prioritizing his career as much as he should. So our top three options at this position had to be Foreign Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, and Haji Wright. Ballo has been the best player and during the friendlies after the Gold Cup, so he has to be here. Pepe, I'm excited to see him again. Scored a goal in the Champions League today. Also, Foreign Balogun also scored a goal in the Champions League, so it was pretty exciting to see both of them score today in the Champions League. But more on Ricardo Pepi, he's a player that always scores when the US needs him to score the most. So yeah, I'm excited to see him. And Haji Wright scored a brace against Australia. Also a player that has a clutch gene with the US. So I have to see him here. We have to see him here during this camp. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.